Hello and welcome to this special show. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet Malhotra and the show is being done in association with Businessworld. Well, a lot of water, as they say, has passed by under the bridge in terms of our economy, in terms of the general environment in the country. Firstly, because of the pandemic, and secondly, because of the economy stalling to some extent. The stimulus package, which was introduced by the government just a few weeks ago, has really blown hot and cold with a lot of people. Some people have found it to be a work of genius, something which will basically revive the economy in the next few months, not even years, they believe. And some also feel that a lot has been left to be desired in the stimulus package, which was put out by the government. So which side our esteemed panelists are going to be? Well, we'll figure that out by the end of the show. But first, let's begin. Joining us on the program is Mr. Ahmed Aftab Naqvi, CEO and co-founder of GoZoop and SparkNext. Ahmed, welcome to the show. We are also joined by Mr. Fiscal, Managing Partner, Ekel Ventures and Ekel Advisory Services. This is Sameer Dahotre, Founder and CEO, PSIVC, PE Funding Network. Mr. Sudhir Agarwal, Chief Relationship Officer, Innovation Technology India Private Limited. So welcome to the show. Dr. Vidur Sehgal, Proprietor, OMDIC, is also here with us. Ms. Anshul Arora, Founder, 1702 Digital, is also here with us. And last but by no means the least, my partner in crime, Dr. Anurag Bhatt, who is the Chairman and Editor-in-Chief of Businessworld and Exchange for Media Group. Welcome everybody to this stimulating show. Since I've used the word stimulating in my opening remark, Ahmed, let me come to you. Let's talk about the stimulus package. What kind of a tune does it ring in your head when I mentioned the word stimulus package? Do you think it was a pleasant one, or was it a neutral one, or was it an unpleasant one? I hope you catch the drift of my question.
Sure. Vineet, a very interesting question here. And the tune that rings in my head is that it addresses two key aspects. One is relief and the other is reform. Right? But with everything in life, there is some good, and there are certain things which could have been done better. I'll start with the good. Right? I think what the relief package has done, it has prevented the cash crunch to becoming an insolvency issue for a lot of small industries. I think that is a good takeaway that we can get from it. But we still have to see the speed of execution, which will be an important factor as to how it's being disbursed in a timely manner. Right. On the other hand, one aspect where I think things could have been done better is that a lot of companies, like for example, we promised no COVID-related layoffs and we paid all the salaries on time without any cuts. So a lot of people in our industry have not done that. There are a lot of layoffs which are happening. There are a lot of salary cuts which are happening. Could government have done something, especially for this quarter, to ensure that the payroll of these companies get a kind of a cushioning? Right, so that there are not so many job losses which are happening in the industry today. So I think one place where I feel that things could have been done better, and the other place where I feel things could have been done better is that there are a lot of emerging entrepreneurs and very small industries which do not qualify for the schemes which have been promised, right? But they are people with a lot of potential and they can do great things. So is there some support for those guys? That would have been great. But having said that, as the saying goes that kabhi kisi ko mukhammal jahan nahi milta, kahin zameen to kahin aasmaan nahi milta. Right? So to take the good from it and see what more can we extract to support the ecosystem.
Ahmed, you made a very right point that there are positives in the package and there are some things that we expected that haven't happened. What do entrepreneurs, for example, in hospitality, in QSR, in airlines, in sectors that were high contact sectors and the revenues have been brought to zero, do in this? What is your advice to other young entrepreneurs?
A lot of sectors. Firstly, we have seen that, in this Chinese word called VG, which is a Chinese word for crisis, where V stands for danger, but G stands for opportunity. So I feel in these times, there's a lot of innovation can happen in each of these sectors. And because we cater to some of these sectors, whether it's hospitality, whether it's the airline industry, we are seeing new ventures being created inside these organizations and companies. I feel there could have been some kind of a stimulus to give more impetus to corporate venture development also in these times, which could have been supported. I think we would have seen great more innovations which are happening, right? And if we have to just look back at history for this, right? Whether it was the Great Depression, which gave rise to the radio, whether it was the First World War, where the wristwatch was invented, or more closer, the last recession in 2008, where Airbnb and all these Uber kind of companies came out, right? I feel a lot of corporate venture support could have been provided to such industries so that there's greater disruption which is happening.
Right, absolutely. Mr. Duggal, Mr. Vikram Duggal, if I can come to you now. Well, what does the stimulus package mean to you? You know, let's look at the current scenario. If we look at oil prices, they're at an all-time high. And in Delhi, diesel for the first time has surpassed petrol. The obvious, inference that one can make is that the government is in trouble. They don't have any money. So obviously, pertaining to the crude prices, they haven't reduced the end cost to the customer or the consumer. This only goes on to show that the government is perhaps trying its level best, but somehow on the ground, it's still not best.
No, I agree. I mean, the perception is such that, with the oil prices having come down globally, people expect an immediate relief. What most people do not end up seeing is that transport and logistics forms a major chunk of the expense.
Can I amplify my question? And do you think that the government in its stimulus package also put a lot of credence to liquidity and demand? So won't slashing petrol prices infuse some sort of a galvanization into that aspect as well? But here you're doing the opposite.
No, so like I said, so firstly, the thing is it's not totally in the government's hands either, because the cost of transportation of petrol and diesel has also gone up significantly, especially during lockdown. So that's one component. Secondly, I think it's a perfectly correct decision to put money in the hands of the people and increase liquidity, because that's what's going to boost demand. And we are seeing already the green shoots of economy come up. We have seen today it was there in the papers that the unemployment rates have come down from a 20%, which they were hovering at, to about 7 or 8% now already, which was pre-COVID times. So we're already seeing a lot of people go back to the jobs the way things were. Economy's back again, picking things up. Things are showing signs of improvement. So I think overall we can't expect the government to do everything for us. And I'm not. This is not a draw from the whole AATMANIRBHAR slogan. That definitely we should aim for. And this crisis with China has definitely put the focus back on Make in India and the manufactured and Swadeshi products. But I think the whole concept of which startups and entrepreneurs deal with is that they have to go and forge out a path for themselves, regardless of what governments or ecosystem players are there or doing or not to help them. They have to forge their own path, and I think that is what is critical right now for I think most of the people who are trying to revive the economy, because we all have to do in our bit. I mean, from a country that barely used to, only less than 5% of its population used to pay tax, now about 7%. I mean, on one hand, we don't even do our basic duty as citizens, but then we expect all kinds of larges and sops and rollouts from the government. So I think that's highly unfair.
What perhaps Vineet is asking, let me ask it another way. You work with startups, you work with early stage companies. Now, the real fear is that in the last 90 days, a lot of them have gone to zero or close to zero revenues. And in the next 60 days, they may kind of fold up because neither do they have revenues nor new funding is coming. And 70% startups may close. Is that a reality? Should we worry about it?
One sec. Anurag, I'd like to come in.
We'll come to you, Mr. Sehgal. We'll come to each of the panelists. Yeah.
So I think, Anurag, the thing is, obviously there is a little bit of an issue with people not making as many investments, but it's not to say that investments are not happening. Investments are definitely happening. People are still looking at opportunities. There are definitely a lot of relevant products and services that are still, bang on hitting the target market. People are meeting the milestones and numbers. So I think, yes, of course, we could have looked at helping, like you said, a lot of these startups who probably had not raised cash or did not have that much of runway to last for, probably 8 to 10 months, or whose business models are no longer relevant in the post-COVID era. but then that is a natural fallout of whatever business you're in. I mean, the dynamic situation we live in today, our business models can become irrelevant tomorrow at the drop of a hat. So that's something we just have to live with, right? So I think it's, like, again, I come back to, instead of expecting the government to do everything for us, sure, I definitely agree that maybe a lot of low cost or lending or low cost debt instruments could be made available to the MSMEs and startups, which of course there are a whole bunch of things available from Mudra scheme to whatever, but there's a lot of gap between the implementation and the policy. So I think that's what really needs to be worked on.
So Samir, again, I'll ask the same question to you as Vineet asked. How do we bring back liquidity back into the system? Because it boils down to liquidity, and you help in companies raising capital. So what is your view on the economic stimulus, and how do you think we can bring back liquidity? Samir Dahatre?
He's not here, Anurag. There's a problem with his connection.
So we'll take the question to Aanchal. Aanchal,
Yeah.
most brands have become D2C. They become direct to consumer. So there is lesser money required in marketing. What do you have to say to the economic stimulus? And do you think the goal of digital transformation is a real goal?
Okay, so Vineet also asked, the pros and cons of whatever the stimulus has been from the government or otherwise. I think Samir also pointed out that the unemployment rate was close to around 27-28%. It touched in the first week of May, and it's now somewhere around 8-9%. But we also need to understand how that unemployment rate has come down. It's actually MG Narega, right? It's because of the sharp increase in the Kharif sowing this year. Around 33 million households have benefited from it, with a 55% increase in the number of households that benefited from it since last year, right? So that kind of brought down our 27% to our 9%. If I were to come down to e-com sales, if I were to discuss fashion sales, the non-essential items, etc., e-com sales are back to pre-COVID levels, yes. And I think smaller towns have been recording a lot of sales because of, the unavailability of products in the supply chain disruption, because of the supply chain problems that they've been facing. But when it comes to the GMV, right, but when it comes to the cart value, that still is 25% lesser than what it was at pre-COVID levels, right? So even though the non-essential items or electronics have been kind of bearing the load of bringing it back to pre-COVID levels right now, it's still, the demand always has like the other side of things as well. And definitely we are looking at a recession, but it's a very sharp but short recession, right? So we definitely, I think everybody has doubled down on the V-shaped recovery now, after hypothesis of a U-shaped recovery, of an L-shaped recovery, Z-shaped, so much there. And I think there will be a very steep contraction in the GDP in the April and June quarter. But then, of course, recovery is at hand. Look at the fuel demand, so to speak. It's almost back to 80-85% pre-COVID levels, right? And that's, of course, a huge pointer. So when it comes to digital transformation, D2C, of course, offline, because of the logistical challenge, because of, a lot of disruption otherwise in offline, in the kind of sanitation requirements that are needed. Of course, DTC, the trust has just risen, boomed, and how. And the result of all of that, of course, for digital entities, for service sectors like us, which are dependent on, other sectors, we also didn't have to lay off anybody. We didn't have to cut anybody's salaries. We, in fact, are talking appraisals right now. So for us, of course, it's been brilliant. Of course, it was bad in
there's no audio again. There's this thing.
Okay, go on, Anshul.
Can you hear?
Yeah. Go on.
Okay, great. So, of course, but I think the economy has undergone what we personally as a microcosm have undergone as well. So it started off decently okayish in February, March, and then immediately in April, everybody was scared. We lost out close to around 20-25% of revenue. And then in the last 1 month, it's steadily again rising, right? So the fears that the people had in that month between, April, May, so that June has alleviated a lot, and July onwards, I still think there's a lot of confidence.
We'll come back to that, what will happen post-July. And the moot point that you talked about was demand. We'll come back to demand. But Samir, I'm coming to you. Samir Dahatre, you'd like to unmute yourself. I'd like to ask you that the whole issue.
Hello?
Yeah.
Sorry, the name is coming as Rene Dahatre. Wait.
it doesn't matter.
That's okay. That is okay. All right.
That is okay. It's a recording. So, Sameer, what we're wanting to ask you is...
He's not here. He's logged out. He'll come back perhaps.
We'll go to Vidur Sagar. Vidur, what is your response to the economic stimulus, and how do you think the economy will do in the near short term?
Okay, a lot can be done. First, we've got to understand that in any market, money has to be a given. Because if it isn't, then how will you enable producers and consumers? Okay, that's clear. Now, every Indian has been paying taxes for the last 50, 60 years. Okay, they're paid either directly or indirectly. Now, this is the first time that a problem like this has arisen. Okay. Now, when a problem like this has arisen, there are lots of sectors which are self-reliant, which have no problems. Their revenue streams are okay. They're working from home. Everything is fine. Okay. But there are lots of people, especially in manufacturing, hotels, airlines, who don't have any revenue and see nothing in the foreseeable future also. So, my opinion is that the government should provide a direct stimulus by letting these people shut their factories and hold the factory ready to turn on as soon as COVID-19 pandemic is over, or there's a medicine or a vaccine available. And until then, the government of India should pick up the tab of payrolls. Okay? Of all these things,
it may be an expectation, but dare I say it's an unrealistic expectation.
It is realistic because the government has a lot of money. It's not showing it. If you read a book called The Deficit Myth by Professor Stephanie Kelton, who has written that deficits are nothing to be scared about. In fact, one of my articles has mentioned that during World War II, America ran up a 25% deficit without any problems. So it's a question of balancing your deficit.
Not worry about fiscal.
1 unit of money
not worry about credit
matched by 1 unit of demand, and you assume the supply lag away. Okay, and once this stimulus is given to everybody who's without revenue or a salary, then the government just has to pick up the tab till the COVID-19 is over, and until then it can order a lockdown, say for 4 or 5 essential services.
But so we are not like the United States. We don't have that kind of an output. We don't have that kind of money like the
output. If you spend, then only will there be an output. If you don't spend, there will be no output. The reason America has a per capita income of $60,000 a year is because they spend that much money on every citizen. Or they buy from that citizen. So a citizen is
again, they can't. Now, why is the
Sameer, we can hear you on air. We can hear you loud and clear. You're on air. Anurag, we have.
No, why they can't hear me?
Sameer, we can hear you very
Can
clearly.
you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you very clearly.
Why I can't hear them? Yeah.
You know, let me go to Sudhir Agarwal at this point. Sudhir, you were an SME entrepreneur. You just turned an entrepreneur. Is it a good time to be an entrepreneur? Is it a bad time to be an entrepreneur? And what is your response to the economic stimulus?
Thanks, Anurag. So 2 things. As far as you said SME, entrepreneurship. Now, if you really ask me, our company as Niveshan, we have done 2-3 things in this COVID time. One, we have not disturbed the business fundamentals, whether it is payments to our vendors, whether it is our employees' salary. We have not touched an iota of that. That is first thing. Second, we have been hiring in this time. Across level, we are hiring, even in this time. So that gives a confidence to our existing people that there is nothing to worry. And third thing, we have also executed our business, because we are in IT business. So a lot of things can be done remotely and some bit of on-site. We have seamlessly still executed our business. And fourth thing about the company I shared with you, we have worked on a very, very large deal remotely, and we are almost done with that. So from our perspective, if you see as a company, we have seen nothing hitting our fundamentals. That is the first thing. On the stimulus, if you ask me, I think first time when Prime Minister announced it, he rightly or wrongly, people may interpret, but he was surprised by the size of the stimulus. That's the first thing. Second, this time if you see stimulus, it is more focused towards MSME or reach the unreached people. It is not said that it is given to the certain groups or certain industries, but it is more focused the wider set of people and wider options.
Survive if the big.
Whether we'll come to the panel discussion in the second. We'll let everyone make the opening remarks. We'll come to you. This NewsX tagline is it's the headquarters of news, not noise. We don't want noise. We don't want noise on the channel.
I hope you can hear
news. So
I hope you can
hear. I can hear you.
All right, Samir, what we discussed is
very optimistic.
What we are talking about, Samir, is the stimulus package, and what has been your initial reaction to what the stimulus package has offered? You think it's meant to please?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, thank you everybody. Thank you NewsX and Dr. Anurag Batra, Businessworld, also for giving me the opportunity to talk about the startup ecosystem. Let me just tell you a quick introduction. My name is Samir Dahotre. I am the founder of PSI VC Funding Network. We are India's largest investor network with around 2,000 investors, 2,000 professionals for 400 VC PE companies and family office funds. So we have the whole network, and we represent our startups for fundraising, corporate sales, and various things. So coming to the question raised on the reaction to the economic package as announced by the finance minister, I would rate it as 6 on 10. Of course, it has been brilliant in terms of inputs on agriculture, for MSME, for laborers. That's the 6 part out of the 10 part. However, Anuragji, particularly what is missing is that if I'm an existing MSME, then I'm getting a 20% additional loan. But if I'm a non-bank, I don't have a relationship with your SBI or your ICICI, I'm not getting any additional stimulus, which is what is the situation of most businesses who have been affected by the pandemic, and that's why they need a sort of a help on this issue now. And then FM says to banks that, don't look at CIBIL, don't look at CRISIL, look at the order book of a startup or an MSME and then give the loan. But sadly speaking, when I am talking to my banks and I know the chairmen of the banks, practical issues are happening like, what is the credit score and all. So instead, we expect they should have given some flexibility on the packages, and particularly for the VC funding industry, deal flows, VCs are funding existing startups, reinvesting second checks in them, and they are also private equity is not at all affected because they are looking at pumping in 100 crores per company, and they are looking at 10-year exit timeline. So PE is not affected. VCs are investing in sectors which will be promising. Example, healthcare. Example, B2B. So a lot of things are there. So this is my first level reaction to the FM package. What was announced?
When do you think demand will come back? The malls opened 2 weeks back. For the first three days in some of the stores, no customer walked in.
Only on paper.
Right. So when do you think the demand will be back?
Demand will be back.
Anurag,
we'll call you. We'll call you.
Yeah. Anuragji, you had a previous show with NewsX and BW where there was a retail entrepreneur you had got on this similar panel, and he was he's really in a bad shape, and the whole problem is that I'm getting scared to go to office, forget going to the mall. So the economy opening up, the fear factor is very much there. So I have 25 startup solutions for COVID, and I have a startup which has a box, and it will track the distance, keep me and Sudhir Agarwal, we are co-workers, and if we come 6 feet close to each other, there'll be an alarm on that device. So these are the kind of things, the fear factors affecting, and it's going to take fair bit of time. There's a 10% work policy, 10% workforce is allowed. I think it should be increased to 30%, 40%, and maybe 50% remaining can work from home for now, for next 60 days.
Whether you were wanting to make a quick point.
Mr. Sehgal?
So, like I said, any market, if you want it enabled, it has to have money as a given. Okay? Otherwise, you don't have producers, you don't have consumers. The government has got as much money as it wants. It should believe in the supremacy of the Indian rupee. Okay? Not bow down to the dollar. You can fix the exchange rate at 60 rupees a dollar and forget it. You want to do business with India? Accept payment in rupees. Simple as that. And if you invite foreign companies, give them INR lines of credit. That and the public sector banking, it's totally in the government sector. So zero interest or negative interest, but produce. If you keep the supply side going, there'll be no shortage of demand because you just have to put money in both demand and supply equally. So 1 unit of money in the demand channel makes 1 unit of supply in the supply channel, and you keep on issuing digital money. You don't even need cash. It's all electronic. Thanks to the IT guys in all over India.
I've spoken to many economists, and some of them concur with you that the government should spend its way out of this economic downturn, and the solution is to print more money and not worry about credit rating in the short term.
Exactly.
To that extent, I agree with you that there is a thought process that concurs with you on the way forward on getting out of this situation.
Ahmed, let me come to you straight. Ahmed, another critique of the stimulus package has been that it's a regular affair. There was nothing that stood out in the stimulus package. It was just like another budget session. If you were listening to it without knowing that it's being addressed for the pandemic, you would have thought that this is a regular budget session or a budget which is read out by the finance minister every year.
I think what you're saying partly has been a perception as well. That the timing in any other time would have looked like another stimulus package. But I feel there are still, as I mentioned in my opening remark, there are some very good positives out of the stimulus package. And if focus is given to that, I think MSME especially can get some benefit out of it. One thing, as I mentioned, that should have been done differently is to give more impetus to create demand. And the only way that would have happened is if there is safety, as one of our panelists also mentioned around us, right? That unless until you feel safe and protected, you're not going to go out. So if this package also had some kind of a stimulus to the healthcare sector, to give it an impetus, I think that would have looked as a positive thing. But ultimately, it all boils down to giving more money in the pockets of the consumer, right? And it could have been done in a better way.
But it's not giving money. It's based on contingent liability.
Correct. So if certain things could have been done, like possibly reduction in interest rates or certain kind of EMI waivers, I think ultimately it would have led to more money in the pockets of the consumers, which could have helped create more demand. But on that aspect, I think there is still much to be desired.
And Aftab, if I had to ask you, what do you think can be done to bring back demand or bring back the economy? What can still be done? What would be your inputs?
I think one of the things is, as I mentioned, that a lot of young entrepreneurs and SMEs that we speak to today don't qualify for the package that has been given. And if the diameter of that package is extended slightly, and they're made more accountable for repayment also, which currently is not as much as it is desired from an entrepreneurship point of view. I think that would be a positive step in the right direction because there are a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of SMEs which are not today getting the benefit of the stimulus package.
And when you talk to your clients, the businesses you advise, what is the kind of sentiment you get from them? Are they on a pause? Do they see the future as optimistic, or do they see it as pessimistic, at least in the short term?
Sure. I think once the lockdown had happened, there was a lot of pessimism around. But that has now changed gradually as people are getting used to this new normal, into seeing how these brands and businesses can accelerate in the post-COVID world or in the new world, as you say, right? And whether I'll speak about enterprise brands, right? And these are very large enterprise brands in the hospitality industry, it's in the FMCG industry. All these guys are today coming up with digital first solutions because the consumer behaviors have changed, right? So their supply chain model, everything is broken now. And they're reinventing that through digital transformation. And they're saying that, you know what, in the post-COVID world, in the new world, there's going to be a lot of pent-up demand already, which is trickling in. And there'll be a lot more demand when things ease out. Am I ready to capture all those opportunities which are there? So I think on one hand, that is happening. On the other hand, also, we are seeing some challenger brands coming in the market today, whether it's around personal hygiene, whether it is in online gaming, whether it is online education, whether it is OTT platforms, right? And all these people are very, very optimistic as to what this future unfolds for them. We are seeing great traction from there, and a lot of advertising spends are going, to prop them up and to acquire customers faster. So from that perspective, I think the perceptions have changed in the past 3 months. And for a lot of brands, and rightly so, they're looking at it positively and seeing how they can win in this new world.
Right. Mr. Sudhir Agarwal, do you think absolutism cannot be applied in this case to any government, whether be it, India or the United States? Because, no government has faced such a crisis ever before.
Is it for me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please.
So, this is one thing I've been repeatedly also talking, that don't compare whether rating or, the performances, because this time has never been seen ever earlier. And if you ask me on the point of, from a 60 to 90 days plan, I think we should do 2-3 things very clearly. One, the negativity that is going on, I think we have to pull it back. Now, I have also written a little bit about it, saying every day if we report, number of new cases, number of recoveries, number of cases under recovery, and number of deaths. Now, luckily for us, we are still under 3%. So that is first thing we need to do. Second, I think this is the time industry and government should focus on bringing labor back. Right now, if you see what is happening, industry is suffering. State governments are bickering among themselves, in terms of sending labor back or holding labor back. I think this is a time that industry and government, if they work together, and they know that where the labor had gone, where the labor has come back. And even the receiving states can't afford to have that labor. I think it's a time collaboratively, we work constructively on bringing the people back, because the moment we bring people back, you will see so many things happening. Your economic activity will start, your consumption will start.
If these people have money, right? You have to pay them. Someone has to pick up the payroll. And that the government of India should do so.
No,
because whether it would be
Mr. Sek, let him finish his point. Mr. Sek, let him finish his point. Let him finish his point. We'll give you an opportunity to respond.
I'm only saying industry and government both have to work together to bring labor back, because bringing people back, I think, will be a norm for us. And if you ask me, third thing, that we should create deterrent, because whatever government is allowing, if people are not falling short of that in execution, I think we have to start working with the industry, with people, that whatever things are being allowed, we should not be holding things back anymore. We should allow things to happen, because that is where the economic activity is. And we should run a theme like Dil Mange More, and we should all work towards with the positivity, because with the current rate, even after the third and fourth lockdown opening up, I really feel scared to say that. But since our number of casualties are still within 3%, I think this is a time to push ourselves into motion and come out of this fear factor. We have to come out of this fear factor.
If I may just interject, my belief is that the worst is yet to come. One, you'll see July, August, more companies facing liquidity issues. You'll see more people losing their jobs because companies held on to cash and survived. So my view is that July, August, September may be tougher than April, May, June. What do each of the panelists have to say to that? Aanchal?
Yeah, so like I said, looking at the clientele that we have, or looking at the customer or the TG emotion, if I were to talk about it, it's not very negative in our case, thankfully. Our CEOs, the CMOs, they're being very, very optimistic about their spends, about, like we call it in the post-COVID world, they are orienting new product ranges, be it in FMCG or otherwise, even BFSI for that matter, whatever ways in which, moratorium or might be granted. Of course, there are a lot of endeavors in and around that. The only thing that will stop us would, of course, be the fear factor. And if we can, take measures around that, that of course will help a lot. And when it comes to growth, right? So, for example, if I say fuel is back to 80-85 levels 80-85% pre-COVID levels, that does not mean growth is back. The 5% growth projection in fuel consumption that we had in the beginning of this year, that will take another 2 years or 24 months to 25 months to come back. So growth is definitely not happening, but degrowth as a whole, if it wasn't negative, I think in 2021, we'll at least see 2 to 3% overall. I'm talking global GDP, right? So that of course will happen, but of course growth and pre-COVID levels, both are different for us right now.
Why there's so much fear? There's no money. People don't have money. You know how scary it is to be without money?
Dr.
That's why they're scared.
More than the money, there is a fear of lives. I agree that a lot of offices have resumed, but employees are hesitant to go there. We as customers are hesitant to go to a mall. We're ordering online. Samir, what do you think can be done to bring the liquidity and demand back?
So one is that let us go back to, let's hope our voice is heard from this channel to the FM, and there should be a immediate new MSME policy for fresh loan applicants, not additional 20% petrol for existing loan holders. We need anybody, an MSME or startups, and we have applied. We have a startup called Our Planet, which is doing almost 15 crore turnover last year, and they are have an order book of 30 crore. I mean, this is a no-brainer VC fundable clean tech startup, and that is the thing. So when we go to VC, we'll definitely close it. But then I don't credit Government of India for VC funding. So that is what it is. So Anuragji, we definitely need some kind of government support. Secondly, if you want to unlock the economy, again and again, we have to be safe. We have to think of solutions that can implement distancing. We have to put those barriers between our cubicles. So because right now 10% workforce being allowed is not going to work. We need to have 40-50% workforce. I mean, how the hell can you actually work at home with your dog around? There's so much noise. The kids are disturbing. So, and there are certain jobs which have to be done from office. Income tax returns have been massively affected. The CAs need to go through your bills and paperwork. You think they can get all those files at home? No, they can't do that. So you need to have the offices for the lot of the sectors. And the idea is that remove gradual measures for actual measures for reopening the economy. Have those technology tools, create those barriers. Allow. How will the local train open? For example, Mumbai is dead without the local train, and so is Delhi without the metro. So you need to have sanitizers and those things at every entry point, at every railway station. You need to have thermal scanners. This is what they've done in China, and I think we should do that. I mean, I know we are in a bit of a problem with China, but some of the ideas which are already implemented.
I'm not sure if this is the best time to quote China as an example.
No. I know. But it's okay. I mean, I'm just trying to say that we can always learn. And definitely we should ignore people like...
Yeah, right. But Vikram, if I can come to you, the world today as we see it is based on opportunities that were leveraged after disasters. And I'm sure most of you would agree. We're in the middle of such an opportunity. So, one man's loss is another man's opportunity. So what kind of opportunities can spring out of this calamity?
I think tremendous amount of opportunities are up there for the taking. Those who are willing to look at the glass half full rather than look at it half empty. And I share the optimism that has been shared, espoused by my other panelists here, that we are strongly, I think we are undermining, the Indian economy, the Indian sentiment, the Indian resilience. For the longest time, we have shown that, we have not gone overboard, when it comes to spending, and have believed in the strong fundamental of saving for times like this. And it is times like this that are savings a lot of these, middle class homes and everybody, they will be able to tide over this crisis. I'm pretty confident of that, because of the fact that strong fundamental of saving and of spending only on the essentials. So a lot of these opportunities, like we are already seeing in our portfolio, a lot of these companies, whether it is the agri-tech or whether it is the consumer goods segment, these guys are doing phenomenally well, much better than even expected, right? I mean, even in healthcare for that matter. Of course, like I said, there will be some business models, some products which will become irrelevant in today's post-COVID era with the new normal. But that's a process of reinvention that most companies in any case have to go through with the technological advances that keep on happening across the world, right? Mm-hmm. So I think what one needs to be really careful about is not let the whole fear factor and pessimism get to you, because that has a spiraling effect. And as you've seen earlier, in many more cases, the whole with the downturn, the recessions, if everybody just stops spending and everybody just rolls back and, cutbacks and whatnot, then, it's a never-ending spiral. But if we keep that positivity up and we keep on, like we said, put more money in the hands, whether it's the people or the companies, roll out more, credit lines, easy access to credit, cut down on the regulatory norms, increase the, access to market. I think tremendous opportunities opening up, whether, it's in electronics or consumer goods or agriculture, you name the sectors, right? One sector might be taking a hit, but there are 3 other sectors which are really doing well. So I think we just need to focus more on what can be done rather than, what we're missing out on.
Whether you want to make a point there?
Yeah, I mean, see, it's very simple. Narendra Modi said, I'll put 15 lakh rupees in everyone's account. Fine. But you have to make 15 lakhs worth of goods and services and products to back that. Not gold, not anything else, not even fiat currency. Okay? If you keep producing and supplying, that is your gold behind the Indian rupee. Okay? Amazon, you can register demand and get supply in 1 or 2 days of so many items, 1 crore items a day. Okay? They are ready to get us kick-started. But for the time being, this disease is bad. Okay? For the time being, the government of India, which has taxed, government employees are getting paid, I mean, for the time being, the government of India should pick up the people's payroll who are not being able to work. Okay? That's only the only issue that
very idealistic view. It may not be the practical view. So then you want to make a point?
Yeah. Anurag, I just want to make, this is my very personal view. I think this is a time, like, Government of India has applied 10% tax for the high income group. I think this is a time to review the agriculture tax on the top of the lot bracket. I think
there should be no taxes.
Let me complete. Let me complete. There is a high income group in agriculture, very well. I think this is a time to crack the code and bring them under taxation. And second, if you ask me, again, this is my very personal view, I think this is a time that our government socio-economic subsidies should become economic based. I think this is a time to cover the masses, and either we are holding back some money on the social factor. I think this is a time to correct these 2 things. If we do this, trust me, what Vidur is saying, maybe there will be a lot of tons of money in the hands of government.
No. See,
what I think this can be spent.
What I talk about is a planned and organized deficit spending. Planned and organized deficit spending where there's no need for taxes, there's no shortage of capital, there's no displacement of personnel, and there's no inflation or deflation. Okay? So you have all the money, INR. Okay? INR is supreme, at least in India. So if you want the Kisan to grow tomatoes, you give someone money through the MNREGA some money to buy tomatoes at the village. But remember one thing, you'll have to grow more, because if it's eaten in the village, it won't reach the city and there'll be inflation then. Okay? So everything is in place. The government might have made a mistake by not giving the cash stimulus in the beginning, but they were also new in dealing with such a situation. So was everybody else. But today you can call back all the immigrants, lock them down in their houses, give them a paycheck where they get rent, food, electricity, water. And as soon as, Baba Ramdev has supposedly come up with a cure. I don't know why we are out to get it. If he says there's a cure, we should encourage it. But the allopathic sector, will never let that happen. So Baba Ramdev has already problems on his hands because he's not been able to show a cure for COVID-19. And why shouldn't it be allowed to be sold? Just like as fake masks from China are being allowed to be sold.
That's a different debate. Let's stick to the debate.
That people find for themselves. Automatically people will know whether that medicine works or not.
You are advocating, Dr. Sehgal, on this debate. We request every guest to be invited to speak when his or her turn comes. We're in the final stages of closing this debate. We want to know from each one of you, where do you see the Indian economy in next 3 to 4 months? Will it be worse? Will it be better? Or it will be tepid as it is now?
And we've already seen what Anurag feels about that.
Yes, I did share my view. Ahmed, we can start with you.
Yeah.
I think in the next, say, 90 to 120 days, we'll see small bursts of recovery. We've already started seeing economic activity happening and small steps towards that. I think that is going to continue. The good part as well as the bad part in one line is that around 60% of the infections today are limited to 5 cities. So the economic activity is going to be region specific, right? There's going to be great variance across regions. But I see that from early next year, we could be on a solid track to recover.
But in next 90, 120 days, will be better or worse off or same?
I think it's going to be a bit jittery, if I'll just add to that. And the situation is so evolving, right? If we have to face a second wave or a third wave, which, hampers the spirits as much as the economic activity, I think that will be a big deterrent to that. So the situation is moving, but as it stands today, we are already seeing movements of economic activity. And I can speak, for all the clients that we are servicing, more than 80 clients in across India, across sectors. And at every sector, we are seeing an onward movement in terms of their economic activity. So that's definitely happening.
And Diwali is on 14th November. So you are saying in October, November, we may see the demand to pick up. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I think just before Diwali is where, also brands are going to go a bit more aggressive with the advertising spend. Everything that we are planning right now, a lot of it is for pre-Diwali time, to do bigger, larger campaigns that time, which should be a big part of the total marketing budget for the year. So I think that is going to be the litmus test as to how we are on the road to recovery and how soon and how we'll be closing the next year. So we'll have to wait and watch because the situation is so volatile right now.
Right. Okay. Mr. Agarwal?
Yeah. So I would like to say 2 things. One, if we work effectively on this labor problem, between industry and government cohesively, I think we will certainly be better off, because this can push the economic activity significantly. Second, to me, I don't think that we are going to have worse beyond this. I do understand that this 3 months have actually been like zero activity period. But going forward, things will be slow but positive. The pace will be significantly slower. We can understand, because people are also worried right now whether they have money in pocket or not, but they are worried spending this money. And very small point, healthcare, I think, healthcare sector should not end up exploiting COVID, from here on. I think that also has to be cautioned very, very carefully.
Do you think that the sentiment is already moving towards a positive trend, because you've seen Glenmark come up with FabiFlu? Mr. Sehgal also mentioned Patanjali coming up with a medicine. Do you think that will infuse some sort of a positivity into the environment, Mr. Agarwal?
So, it's like this, from zero activity, at least we are getting into activity movement. Now, it is the fear factor which is holding back a lot of people home. For how long we can...
Well, will this fear factor be negated by the advent of these medicines, is what I meant to ask you.
Yeah. So fear factor, even if we say like all of us put together as society, if we start creating positive conversations saying do these 3, 4, 5 things and you are good with COVID, vis-a-vis keep saying don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. See, that is where we have to bring people out of... I live in an apartment complex and I know maybe 5% of people, they haven't come out of their houses for last 3 months. So is it viable?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Mr. Sehgal?
Well, like I'm saying, if the government starts spending, there's no problem about growth. Okay? It's up to the government of India to start spending. It can pay its own employees. It can pay all public sector company employees. But whether they're performing or not, Air India is running at a 50,000 crore loss, and they're worried about Vijay Mallya. It purely depends on what the government decides to spend.
The government is doing the right thing to bring somebody who's a defaulter home. I think the government should be complimented on that. And the government is doing its best. Vikram?
Yes, I agree. The government is doing its best. Now, coming back to us, I think let's look at a few interesting developments that have been happening in the past few days or couple of weeks. We have seen quite a few medications that have been, successfully tested. They've been, news has become public about how they're being really effective in, dealing with the treatment and how different vaccines. Yeah. Sorry?
They're effective in dealing with mild to moderate cases, and 80-90% cases are mild to moderate.
Correct. And we are seeing very positive reports about how the vaccine trials are also progressing. So I think if we take all these factors into, and also another factor that needs to be considered is that initially when the pandemic hit us, everybody had taken a very, worst case scenario outlook, but somehow, thankfully, by grace of God, things have not, gone down that south as we expected it to. And the recovery has also already started happening in a lot of fronts. So I think taking all these factors into consideration, I don't think this, thing will last. The whole, pandemic will last more beyond September, October, because the rate at which the treatments and the vaccines are scheduled to come out, I think a lot of this will also have that whole positive effect on everybody. And a lot of people will start taking more, and they shouldn't take risks with their health and everything, but they'll definitely start stepping out with the new normal. And I think that is a very good thing because, Indians per se typically have been very difficult to discipline ourselves when it comes to standing in queues and following, social distancing and those kind of things, right? But somehow this pandemic has even taught the people in the slums or the rural areas or people where, you would least expect that kind of a discipline from. They are showing the maximum amount of discipline by staying away, right, from each other and practicing those kind of hygiene protocols. So I think overall it, considering the medical advancements in the treatment and everything else, once the news of the recovery starts, and already we are looking at a 50% plus recovery rate, right? So I think overall this is not bound to last longer than like Aftab said. I would also put my money on Diwali. Right, and let's hope we have a glorious Diwali this year.
Anchal?
I think this is barely a debate now. All the panelists agree.
By the way, this is the most optimistic panel
you
and me have had in a while. This is the most
You have a
popular
lot of people
panel.
from the digital industry, I think, that is reflecting in this panel.
Yes.
Yes, all the clients. But no, honestly, I think as an entrepreneur, as a leader who is responsible for so many jobs across cities, etc., our job also is to be eternally optimistic about things. And of course, there are a lot of factors also helping us being optimist, right? The kind of fear that we had, the sub 50 years fear, right, that people had, that fear is kind of, alleviating. Even if I know so many people around me who have been tested positive, all of them have recovered, right? So that fear kind of is kind of getting better, which is helping things. I mean, again, I was reading about L&T. There's this person who was telling me that their order book, the losses that they underwent in the last 2 months was somewhere around 14,000 crore, and they already have an order book backlog of 3,33,000 crore in the next 2 months, 3 months to fulfill. So I think the recovery is surely going to happen. Of course, like all the panelists also said, it's not going to be steep. The kind of growth that we are looking at is not going to come, but pre-COVID levels, definitely we are there. We are heading towards, or we're almost there. Yeah.
Samir Daotre.
Yes. So since we are closing, I would like to thank Vineet from NewsX and, of course, dear Dr. Batra, who's a very passionate host and encourages all speakers of all shapes and sizes. So thank you, firstly. Overall, we would see a U-shaped recovery for the economy. And Dr. Batra, you would know that when you talk to finance people like me, we talk about, L-shape, which is a horrible, never-ending, maybe till 2021. That's one way. We will be a flat, we are going down the V and a quick up the V. So we are not seeing L or V. We are seeing a U-shaped recovery. It will be slow. Anchal just stole the words from my mouth because even like her, I know people who have recovered from COVID. It gives me the confidence. There are measures like Vineet was talking about, some tablets which we've been taking, so we have to go out there. There's no doubt about it. And, it's a phase wise, you have to put those masks, and we have those copper mask startup also. Copper is, by the way, a very good solution to kill the coronavirus, because we have a startup called Shubhag, which is making copper mask, and this has been endorsed by, a lot of the scientific gurus all across the world, by WHO also. And overall timeline, yes, I'm good with all the other panelists. November, we will see the economy coming back to normal. People in digital like Ahmed ji and Anchal will also see a lot of surge in digital. But offline advertising will also pick up. Newspaper advertising will pick up, and we'll see a good recovery by Diwali.
Okay. All right. We haven't missed anybody out. And on that note, we'll wrap up the show. In fact, sir, you wanted to make a point. Go ahead, sir. Quickly.
You'll have to unmute yourself, Sudhir.
Yeah, Mr. Agarwal.
Thanks, Dr. So, if one thing that government can do very definitely, I think they can come up with a program to encourage the industry that who demonstrates certain level of coming back to normal at without casualties and those things. The government may want to look at rewarding them or recognizing them. I think that could be one note from government to industry.
All right. Thank you, sir, for that.
Interest rates in USA are so low.
Okay, Mr. Sehgal, sir, we've run out of time, unfortunately.
30 seconds. Interest rates are brought down here, and that saving can be passed on to the labor with our competitive labor. The interest outgoing on capital and machinery is more than the wage bill of any company. That's shameful, And these things have to be looked at. And I've got nothing against the government of India. They're great, but they have to be greater. Okay, that's all.
All right.
Thanks a lot, NewsX. And,
right. It's absolutely a challenging situation, not only for the man on the road, man in the house, man wearing that mask, but also for the government. They've never faced such an unprecedented crisis before. So you'll have to give them the benefit of the doubt. On that note, thank you everyone for being a part of this tremendous show. It was enjoyable, informative, and very articulate. Thank you everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.